it's all of them though, isn't it? I mean, I don't think I've ever been so spectacularly uninspired in the lead up to an election, particularly on climate issues. You know, you had the stuff at the top of the show with genuine fear from New Zealanders who were genuinely experiencing loss. What is it going to take? Is it going to be Christopher Luxon driving up the steps of Parliament in his Tesla for us to turn things around? I mean, what I would like to see
Two Teslas.
Is every day at 12 o'clock we turn on the tally and there's the climate Ashley Bloomfield telling us how it's going, because we need leadership and responsibility. I'm quite happy to be that person, by the way.
You're auditioning for the job.
For us to take it seriously. We just got no leadership. And I don't know if the politicians are trying to bore us into an election, but that's what it feels like.
Matthew, what did you think? Because we have some disagreement on the left now too, between James and Labor, and disagreeing with their policy we released yesterday.
Particularly over agriculture. I mean, as James said, he said that he thinks his own government's policy in agriculture is a bit of a shambles. They had the process working with the industry that in the end was not successful, and agriculture remains the issue in climate change that no one in New Zealand wants to deal with, because it's difficult and because it's economically important. But, you know, a lot of that debate, I could have imagined it was Rod Donald or Jeanette Fitzsimons talking to Simon Upton in 1996.
Well, it's been going on a long time.
And we've had this debate about how to mitigate. It's become quite boring. There's two sides of the argument. One is New Zealand's too small and it doesn't really matter. The other one is we must show moral leadership and we should do our part. Right, great, terrific, have that debate. But I think after what happened at the beginning of the year and what's happened in Europe this northern summer, this debate has to be at least as much about adaptation. And I think that's what the voters want to hear about as much as methane targets and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
I don't even think it's just moral anymore. I think it's an economic argument, because it's enshrined in our, you know, the new trade deal that we've signed with Europe. We're not going to be able to trade if we don't meet these targets. So, I mean, I feel sorry for Watts, because he is in a very difficult position of having to say a whole lot about action, but don't say too much about what the action is, because that'll freak people out. But just say that there's action and that there's targets, and we really believe in the targets and we're going to meet them, but don't say how. Say some stuff about electrification, but there's not a plan on how to do that. So I just think what a depressingly unambitious stance from National and also Labor, because those two big roading announcements, I mean, great, Kiwis love roads, and yes, we do need roads for EVs and buses to drive on, but then the evidence shows that if you make it easier to drive, people will drive more. And, you know, National's going, we've got all these great roads and people need to drive on them with their EVs, but there's no explanation of how you're going to incentivise people into public transport.
And just no leadership, right? So you've got the poor old farming community who are, you know, responsible for half of all of our emissions. What we should be doing, and what we should have been doing for the last 20 years, is guiding them and bringing and showing action. And instead what we do is we go, well, that's really bad and half the world's on fire, but we're just going to delay it for another several years.
And I think one of the reasons for that is because instead of it being seen as a serious problem on either side, it's been seen as a virtue signalling exercise, one way or the other.
And a vote killer.
And you had to talk about how much you believe in climate change, you know, and you had to believe in it sufficiently, passionately, to be taken seriously. The most important initiative New Zealand ever took was actually at the Copenhagen conference when Tim Grosser set up the Global Research Alliance in agriculture. The one thing New Zealand can do through our excellent universities, Massey and so forth, is work on a global solution to methane. Everything else is nonsense. I mean, the truth is that is the. I mean, in the end, we'll all have electric cars. Anything else New Zealand says or does is irrelevant except for that one issue.
But isn't it such a boring, parochial stance to be like, oh, we're too small, you know, we don't have the ambition?
But we're not in that area. That's the area where we are the world leader.
No, but that seems to be the argument now, you know, against versus, you know, that you mentioned, Matthew, that sort of there's a certain school of thought that we're so small and our carbon footprint as a nation is so small, then why do we need to be the ones making change?
And the other thing is, like, we love to be world leaders.
Don't we love to be world leaders? Exactly.
And we are racing to the bottom. And, like, where's our next Everest? Where's our next nuclear-free moment? And we're just going to sit in the corner and wait for everyone else to do it.
So regardless of those issues, what does have to happen in a global sense is to get it out of the UN system. The UN has never solved a problem in its life. It was set up to stop war. I mean, the Montreal Protocol stopped fluorocarbons within 18 months. The small group of countries that are responsible, India, China, the United States, have to reach an agreement. If they don't, then this terrible catastrophe is going to happen. And so the issue is adaptation and building up the military, quite
In
frankly.
reduction, can I also
Hang
just
on,
say...
I'm going to
Sure,
have
you know.